Welcome back, you atheists and agnostics. We're going to pick it up where we left off. At the end of the first video, I said that I wasn't going to debate the atheist on his home turf. Instead, I was going to look at the level of presuppositions and epistemology, and I promised I would define what those two-bit words meant. A presupposition is simply something that you suppose ahead of time. It's like an assumption. But it's an assumption that you can't really prove. And we all have what we call self-evident truths, and we don't try to prove them. We presuppose them because they seem to work. Life seems to work when you just assume them or take them for granted. We presuppose that we exist. We presuppose that language has meaning. We don't try to prove that, ultimately. We assume that our sensations and perceptions are valid, and that they correspond or at least communicate something about the reality of the outside world. We all have presuppositions. We can't prove them. We assume them to be self-evident, and we proceed with our lives based on those presuppositions. Atheist has them. Theist has them. Agnostic has them. So presuppositions. And then epistemology really are theories of knowledge. How do we know what we know? We're going to talk about presuppositions and epistemology a little later, but first, let's examine agnosticism. Agnosticism claims to hold or occupy a middle ground between theism on the one hand and atheism on the other polar extreme. It claims a middle ground. There are two versions. There's the don't know kind of atheism or agnosticism and the can't know. The don't know version is where a person says, you know, I'm not saying Joe Blow over there doesn't know there's a God, but I don't know. So the don't know version says, I don't know whether God exists, and I'm not saying nobody else could know, I just don't know. The can't know version is what I call the Bill Maher version. You know who Bill Maher is. I guess he's a comedian, isn't he? I guess he's kind of a funny guy. He's a pretty smart guy too, from what I can see. But he appears to be an agnostic of the can't know stripe. And one of the things that really bugs him, it seems to be his pet peeve, is when theists and Christians come across as really cocksure of their position, like they really know that God exists and they know the Bible's true and they know that they've got the truth. Bill Maher and the other can't-know agnostics find this very repugnant. In fact, I've heard Bill Maher actually say, you can't be that sure. You can't really know for sure if God exists. Now stop for a minute and think of how absurd that is. I mean, I bet there are a lot of things that you know that I don't know. The fact that I don't know it, I mean, what kind of logic is it for me to say that because I don't know it, you couldn't know it? It's really circular. It's non sequitur. It doesn't follow. So there's the don't know and the can't know. Agnosticism has a respectable veneer because many times it appears to be open-minded and non-dogmatic. Many atheists just say, I don't know. I'm not going to be dogmatic and say God exists. I'm not going to be dogmatic and say He doesn't exist. But I don't know can often be a cloak or an excuse that is behind a refusal to think or commit, and it can also mean I don't really want to talk about it. I mean, haven't you ever been talking to somebody about an important subject and you could see that they didn't want to talk about it, so the way they blew you off was they just started saying, I don't know. You wives know how that is when you try to talk to your husband or your kids, and they just keep saying, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. You know, what I don't know can sometimes really mean I don't know. But it can also mean I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to have to think about it. You know, it can mean shut up and quit asking me questions, right? And sometimes that's what agnosticism really is. It's just an excuse to not have to think critically. So the real agnostic now, that's what we're going to talk about, not the fake agnostic or the tongue-in-cheek agnostic that just doesn't, he's lazy intellectually. But your real agnostic, your person who says, you know, I honest to goodness don't know if God exists. He will use the same arguments as the atheist when you get into any kind of a debate about the existence of God. In other words, he's going to want you to use rational arguments like the cosmological argument and the teleological argument, you know, the argument from cause and effect and the argument from design. And he'll want to counter with rational arguments of his own along the line of, why is there evil and suffering in the universe? If God is all-powerful, why doesn't he stop evil and suffering? If he can stop it. And if he's all good and all righteous and he could stop it and he does it, how can he be good? Those are the kind of arguments, and other arguments about all of the atrocities committed in the name of God, you know, in the Crusades, and how people who claim to know God and be Christians slaughter other people and engage in all kinds of carnage and immorality. Those are the rational arguments that an atheist will use. But an atheist, just like or an agnostic, just like an atheist, is a fool. The Bible says in Psalm 14:1, "The fool hath said in his heart, there is no God." And again, a fool is not a stupid person or an unintelligent person. He can be highly intelligent, highly educated, but doesn't have the ability to use that knowledge in a wise kind of a way in the world. A person doesn't believe in God, a person says there's no God, is a fool, according to Scripture. And so when you argue with somebody who's a fool, Proverbs chapter 26, 4 and 5 says, "Do not answer a fool according to his folly, lest you be like him." Don't sink to his level. "Answer a fool as his folly deserves, lest he be wise in his own eyes." So I told you that I was going to argue this on the level of epistemology and presuppositions, and I plan to just do that. So let's start off with epistemology, and we'll get into that, and we probably won't exhaust it by the end of this video. Probably take us into the next video. But the first type of knowledge, the first theory of knowledge, is called empiricism, or empirical knowledge. This is knowledge of the physical universe that is gained through the senses of taste, touch, sight, hearing, and smell. There's 5 of them, and I hope there's not a 6th one, but if there is, I don't know about it. Physical science is based on this kind of knowledge. When atheists and agnostics ask for proof of God's existence, this is usually what they're referring to. This is what they mean. In other words, show me something that I can taste, touch, see, hear, or smell. Prove that God exists. They're asking for empirical knowledge. Now, empirical knowledge is valuable. We know, for example, we got this bottle of water here. I can see it. You know, I can touch it. I can hear it. I can open it up and smell the plastic. I can taste the contents inside, and I know it exists. That's empiricism. All science, pretty much, scientific method, is based on empirical knowledge. When an atheist or an agnostic asks you to prove the existence of God, this is what he's asking you for. So that's empirical knowledge, and then there's rational or conceptual knowledge, and that's knowledge in the realm of ideas and concepts. It includes logic, mathematics, and language. This kind of knowledge does not technically exist in the physical universe. I mean, concepts are ideas. They're non-material. And yet we accept logic and rational knowledge as a valid form of knowledge. So we're going to wrap it up with those two. Empirical knowledge through the senses, and rational knowledge and conceptual knowledge. And we're going to pick this up in the next video.